All right. If it's Tuesday, that means it could be time for only one thing, and that means it's time for Comic Book School Live. My name is Buddy Scalera, and this is Comic Book School Live. I think we got through that. And I'm Buddy Scalera, and I am a comic book writer and a comic book educator with 30 some odd, very odd years of experience creating comic books from start to finish. And one thing I've learned is that the editor is always the boss. Except when your co-host is three-time Emmy Award-winning Mike Fasolo. Mike, welcome to the show. There's not even a picture. There it is. There's the picture. What's going on with your Wi-Fi, Mike?
It is just it's a bad time on the house right now.
All right, so we're just gonna move right into the show and welcome our very special guest. Welcoming back Mike Marts. Mike, welcome back to the show. Now, Mike, your Wi-Fi is significantly better, I believe.
It's strong and clear, buddy.
The force is strong with you, Mike. So, Mike, this is a follow-up episode. We've been doing multi-part episodes, and we are so happy to have you come back because today we're going to be talking about what your art portfolio must include. Now, just for point of reference, so everybody knows, my co-host right there is Mike Fasolo, a three-time Emmy Award-winning television writer. Know the guy from Wizard, Toy Fair, Inquest, and of course Robot Chicken. Even though we say three-time Emmy Award-winning, that is an Annie, right, Mike? For Annie,
that is an Annie.
That is an Annie. Mike, you're lip syncing or not lip syncing or whatever it is. You're like an oil painting. We just put a picture up. I'm Buddy Scalera, and yes, I've done some comic books, including some with you, Mike Marts, like that one right there in the center.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. Valuable issue, number 54, goes and sells for a good couple bucks. That's how I pay for this show. It's not the subscribers, that's for sure. We don't charge. There's no money in fan editing. But of course, that's you, Mike. Mike, you have had an amazing career. Marvel, DC, Aftershock, Valiant, and now Mad Cave. And of course, where we all met at Wizard Entertainment, right?
Yeah.
All right, a little copy for that. It's not like that. Mike, you're like 30. How many 30 something? It's got to be 30 plus years, including the comic shop. How many years is it?
Well, 32 years in the publishing industry. If you count the comic shop, it's probably like 34 or 5 years.
34 or 35 years. Wow, about the same for me. Oh, look at that. Good morning, Redheaded Ed. How are you? Nice to see you. Oh, class did start on time.
Yeah, you can always count on Andrew being here.
Jared. Now, we should note that Andrew and Jared are dialing in from Australia, Mike.
Oh, yeah, that's dedication.
That is dedication. So it's exactly almost 12 hours, so it's about 8 a.m. there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Perfect way to wake up.
Great way to wake up. So, Mike, tonight we're going to be taking on part 2, but we do want people to check out part 1. So in the last episode where you joined us, Mike, you talked in great detail about what editors do. This is a little clip from the show. What were you showing here in the little left corner here?
For that, we were talking about scheduling, and specifically for a regular ongoing series. So for something like that, it looks like, we have like a 6-issue story arc, and we laid out the deadlines for the artist, the colors, letter, the writer, everything.
Yeah. So if you're very interested in learning what it takes to be an editor or working with an editor like Mike Marts, who is editor-in-chief of Mad Cave Studios, this is a great episode to watch. It's part 1. You should definitely check that out. But tonight, we're going to be diving deep into what your art portfolio must include. Now, this is mostly focused on pencilers, right, Mike, in this particular focus, because I know that you talk about this in great detail in other aspects of the business. You want to just talk about, just set this up for me?
Yeah, definitely. So, for tonight's segment, we're going to be focusing on the portfolio of the artist. So, traditionally in the industry, the penciler, Though a lot of times these days the artist does both pencils and inks. But tonight we're talking about the essential do's and don'ts, or what should go into your portfolio. And we're gonna kind of like leapfrog over like some basics and just assume that some real drawing essentials should definitely be in the portfolio, and we're going to talk a little bit more about like things on the side.
All right, good. Now, this is an unusual episode, Mike, because you've come prepared with 2 video clips.
Oh no.
Yes, you have 2 video clips. The first is about the number of pages, but before we do that, can you just tee up why you have these incredibly slick videos that
Sure.
even I had not known about until just 2 days ago?
Yeah, so maybe about 10 years ago, I started a consulting business on the side. It was called The Comics Coach, and it was set up. I found myself over the years like receiving a lot of pitches from people or scripts or fully lettered PDFs of their comics, and I was being asked to, would you mind taking a look at this? Would you mind doing an edit on this? And I would do it enough that I figured, this might be an interesting way to make some money on the side. So I set up the Comics Coach as a separate business, and for a few years I was coaching some writers on their pitches that they were submitting to different companies, and then also editing some of their books on the side. Like, there was a few writers that already had publishing deals with Image or some other publishers, and I would basically walk them through all the creative steps and be there along the way to edit, sometimes to suggest artists to them, and just walking them through all of the normal steps of the comic book process.
Yeah, and I find that to be very interesting because I never knew about this.
Well, you didn't have to be one of my clients. But, one of the things that comes up so often in not only the editor's role, but, the art director, and certainly when I was working as a consultant too, is the question of the portfolio and, what to include in it, how to prepare it, how to behave at a portfolio review, all those different things. They would come across my desk so many different times that I figured it's worth putting together like a 10 commandments of a great comics portfolio. And that's how the video was born. I had some friends help me out, and we put this video together. It's kind of a step-by-step walkthrough of preparing yourself.
It's
to make
I gotta tell you, it's really amazing, and I'm gonna run the first clip here, and it answers an essential question I imagine you get a lot, which is how many pages should I have in my portfolio? Let's roll the clip.
A second commandment is limiting the pieces in your portfolio. I get this question a lot. Mike, how much is too much? How much is too little? Above 10 but below 15 is a great number to shoot for.
Okay. Yeah.
I think anything less than 10, you're not really giving an editor a proper chance to really know what type of an artist you are.
Mm-hmm.
And anything more than 15 is just going to be excessive at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, you only have so much time to look at something like that.
Exactly. You get in front of an editor, you don't know how much time you have. Maybe a minute, maybe 5 minutes, you don't know. So you want to be able to have enough pieces there where they can go through it, not feel like they're sitting there forever, but enough pieces to showcase everything that you're about.
Wow, Mike, that's really good. I think I got to tell you.
That was before I needed reading glasses to do everything.
I know. It's a good thing you didn't ask me and Mike to do it. We don't know if we would have had a good enough connection to stay on with you.
Right.
All right, Mike. So you just there talked about the importance of the right number of pages. So what we're going to do in this next step is the basics of portfolios. And this is Mike Ponce, He is part of the comic book school community and one of our designers. He also makes his own comic book, and I twisted his arm a little bit and said, "Can I have some of your sample pages to show Mike Marts?" Now, Mike, you don't have to try and squint and look at these. We'll do a zoomed in view.
No, it's okay. I can see them.
But I think the key thing, and one of the things that you do note often in conversations, is this is not what you want to see. Oops. This is not what you want to see. Specifically, you make the basic assumption that if you can, take the time to show a portfolio to an editor, you don't want to see their cover work or their pinup work. Talk to me about why showing sequentials is so important to you as a comic book editor.
Right. So one of the big commandments of having a great portfolio is having sequential work. Covers are nice, covers are pretty, covers are eye-grabbing, but it's very, very rare that throughout my entire career I've ever hired an artist just because they did great covers.
Now, why is that?
Because there's already so many wonderful cover artists out there in the industry right now. And some people get into work as a cover artist, and that might be all they do. And so people go back to the big names: Francesco Francavilla, Peach Momoko. There's so many different people.
Ross.
J. Scott Campbell. So many great cover artists out there that for someone new, a rookie, to come in and like suddenly get a cover gig, it's not really something that happens very often, because more often than not, you're going to your heavy hitters, you're going to your bench for the experienced cover artists. You're not going to go to someone new unless they happen to be, the next J. Scott Campbell or, the next big thing. But that's going to be extremely rare. So for what we ask for, what we want to see in portfolios is sequential storytelling. You're going to be hired because you can tell a story. So it's essential that in your whole portfolio, most of it is sequential pages. You want to throw a cover in there, just to show you can do covers, that's fine. But it's not going to get you a job.
All right. So the question is, I'm not an artist, but I've heard that having scenes like street scenes with traffic or crowds helps. Mike?
Yeah, definitely. Another one of the commandments is basically having varied types of environments. So you want to be able to show that you can draw city streets. You want to be able to show that you can draw underwater scenes. You want to be able to draw forests or outer space or caves. In the comic book world, we're dealing with fiction, and it's fantastic fiction, and stories can take place so many different places. Think about a Thor story taking place in Asgard, or a Namor story taking place, in Atlantis, underwater. Two totally different places. Spider-Man swinging through the streets of Manhattan. So your pages should show great variation in environments. And that doesn't mean that if you have 15 pages, you have to show 15 different environments, but you want to show a bit of versatility there.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that you note in your video, we'll reference the video, and then we're going to go to Mike's portfolio, and I just want you to react to it. Is that unlike what Mike is doing in the pages that he shared here, you don't recommend that artists write their own script. That you recommend what? That they draw from?
Yes, I definitely. That's not to say that artists out there can't be good writers. They might be, but More often than not, if you are an artist, that's going to be, what you were trained in, and having an actual script from a professional writer definitely helps. Professional writers will know how many panels per page there should be, what type of camera shots there should be in a specific page. So get your hands on a script from a professional writer. There are plenty of free scripts online for this sort of thing. I know Marvel, when they have a tryout, they have a specific sample script that they send to people. I'm sure DC does the same thing. There are scripts out there, so find them and use them.
Now, before we jump into it, Jared from Australia, he asked, with sequential art pages, does this in any way include the dialogue/narration, or maybe on a separate script, so the viewer can follow the storyline, or just the art, Mike?
So for tonight's purposes, we're talking about the artist. The dialogue that eventually gets down is going to be done by both the writer and the letterer. So we're really just focusing on the artwork. But that being said, a great story should be drawn in such a way that you could look at it and what happens without words. That's the best type of story. So if you sit down, you look at the pages, and you can tell, where we're beginning, what happens in the middle, and how it ends on any given page, that's an effective story. Also, on the side, the artist does want to be aware that there will be word balloons placed within the panels. Most times an artist is going to be working from a full script, which means that not only does it provide panel descriptions and scene descriptions, but it also will include what the dialogue or the caption boxes are. So when you're an artist and you're going in, you should be able to tell, okay, this panel has 2 word balloons. I have to leave room for these 2 word balloons. I also have to have the characters arranged in such a way within the panel where the first person speaking is usually on the left side and the second person is usually on the right side of the panel. There's always going to be exceptions, but those are good basic rules to follow. So you always have to stay aware of what the dialogue is and how it's going to be placed within the panel. A lot of times also, you'll find that the most effective way to lay balloons is towards the top third of a panel. So a lot of great artists, you look at the Kuberts like Andy and Adam, you see their pages, and most of the action, most of the characters are in the bottom 2/3 of the panel. And then there's this kind of like dead space towards the top, which a lot of times is left for dialogue.
Yeah, so that's their experience speaking, and in a lot of ways, I guess you're looking to see how these artists are setting up their portfolio. Now, Mike, right now, I'm going to go in little chunks of 2 pages. I mixed up the pages, not on purpose, and this is not Mike's actual portfolio, but in the event that Mike were to come in front of you, slap it down on the table in front of you, you would probably see it like this, which is 2 pages at a time. I'm going to ask you specifically not to critique the art or anything of that nature. More than anything, what I'd like to get is your instant reaction as you turn the pages. What are you thinking? What are you thinking about the scenes? And then you tell me when you would actually turn the page so that I would get a sense of how quickly you would go through this as you were doing an actual portfolio review.
Yep. Okay. Well, if it's okay, can you go back to the bigger thing? It's easier for me to kind of do it that way. So I'm seeing some good things here. Mike is drawing in a basic grid format. And by that, I mean that all of the panels are arranged in such a way where they are vertical and horizontal lines that go straight across that form the boundaries of the panels. This is classic Jack Kirby, Keith Giffen style page layouts, which is great. It's essential for people starting out. I always advise them stick to the grid. Don't try to get too experimental with diagonal panels, with panels that overlap. A lot of times what you get there is unclear storytelling. So for the most part, I like what I see Mike doing with the pages being laid out. There's a few exceptions, like on the bottom row, the second one, I don't know if I'd really go with a circular panel, and I also wouldn't go with that, like that kind of diagonal gutter running across those two panels there. Because to me, when I get to that third panel or the fourth panel on the page, that diagonal space, that diagonal gutter is forcing my eye to make a weird decision. I don't know if I should go down directly below to the next panel or if I should go to the bottom left. So stick to the grid, stick to regular horizontal and vertical lines if you're beginning. That's going to make for much clearer storytelling.
Now, Mike, I'm a big not fan of this kind of breaking over the gutter. Unless there is I consider it a special effect, like a movie special effect. There has to be a reason why you're breaking out of the frame. If there's not a reason, it's like having a special effect in a movie that is dissonant with the movie. It doesn't actually work. But I do see a lot of this in, new artists and an established artist. Do you have a preference?
If artists are just starting out, I usually advise them to stay away from it in the beginning. If you are going to add it in, I wouldn't do more than one per page. Breaking the panel border, when you do that, it's going to call attention to itself. It's going to call attention to, whatever it is that's breaking the panel border. If it's a fist or if it's a gun. In this case, it's a head, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not a really dynamic part of the story. So you're kind of calling attention to this head and probably a very quiet portion of the story. I don't know that that's really necessary. So I would try to save it for big action moments. Maybe there's a fist that's coming across the panel border or a kick of some sort. But if you're doing that, the most important thing is if you do decide to break the panel border, you must have it leading towards the next panel. Because again, you want to assume that all of your readers, not that they're, I'm trying to think of the PC way of saying this. You just want to assume that the readers need help in reading. Okay, even if they're skilled readers, you want them to have all the help available. And so you make it simple, you make it easy for the readers, and you make it easy for their eyes. And on any given page, there's going to be a direction of the story. And if you're breaking the panel border, you want to make sure that you're directing the reader's eye to the next panel, to where the action will be going next.
Okay, and that makes sense. I mean, you see that sometimes it'll point to the top left of the next panel, and that makes sense because the eye is going to travel in that Z pattern.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, so some things I see about Mike's work that I like, he is moving the camera around. So there is a nice combination of close-ups, long shots, establishing shots, middle shots, and he's tilting the camera. So there's some nice variation to the camera angle, to the camera selection, and that's important because what you want to avoid is the same type of shot over and over, because the reader will get bored, the reader's eye will get tired. You want to constantly keep things moving around and keep it energetic and keep it exciting. You really want to picture yourself within an action movie, if it's an action comic book, and and treat your panels, your camera selections the same way. Keep it exciting.
All right. So, looks like there's a question. Okay. So, Redheaded Ed asked, you said show lots of environments, but not every page a different story. Is it better to have a few pages of one story to see the page turns and spreads, or better to have each page to be as different as possible? So, are you working from one script, or are you piecing together something that shows your diversity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would advise writers to break it up. Have a few different stories if you can in your portfolio. Having one, if let's say your portfolio is 15 pages and you have one long story that's 15 pages, like Redheaded Ed is right. You're only going to have one environment and you're going to have the same characters show up. So break it up. Have a few pages of this story, have a few pages of the next. Anyone taking a look they're not going to be studying it so hard that they'll want to see how you draw 22 pages of a full story. They want to get a good idea that you can tell a story through sequential pages and that you can draw things in sequence. So a few pages per story is fine.
No, that's a good piece of advice, and especially when you think about, what Mike is doing here. Again, this is an actual story that Mike has done. So, he'd be coming in front of you with a portfolio if he were doing this. Now, it is worth noting that Mike is a digital artist. Any recommendations, Mike, about what an artist should do if they only work digitally? They're not doing traditional art boards?
Listen, I mean, these days, for so long now, whether someone is drawing on the artboard or whether someone is composing it digitally, editors are going to receive the pages in the same way. We're going to receive them as files, which is very different from 30 years ago, where everything was artboards arriving in a FedEx box that you would go make copies of, and et cetera, et cetera. These days, everything is delivered as a file. So from my end, I don't really mind how you put a page together. If you're drawing it all freehand on artboard and then scanning it, that's fine. If you are using digital tools to put your pages together, that's fine too. So long as in the end, both those things look the same and I can't really tell what your creation process was. I just want to see a great looking page that tells a story. So it doesn't really matter to me how it gets created. The exception to that, of course, is nothing generated artificially through AI.
Yeah, and I think, of course, and I think one of the things that is different now than from when we were first coming into the industry was so much more of it was done in person. There's not as much in-person portfolio review as there traditionally was. Back when we were breaking in, Mike, we could go up to the booth and you could count on meeting some Marvel and DC editors there. You just don't see that as much anymore. In fact, I think Mad Cave Studios, your company, is among the few companies that still staff editors at large conventions.
Yeah, I mean, listen, every company's process is different. It certainly is different than how it was years ago. It was easier to approach people at a convention. I think mainly because the traffic at a convention was different. Everything was so hardcore comic books back in the days. Nowadays with Hollywood stuff toys, video games, comics. I'm not saying it takes a back seat, but it's not front and center like it used to be. So a convention may not be the best place to to show your work, because a lot of times companies may not want to send their editors out to a show because it just might not be cost effective. Conventions these days are primarily sales and marketing functions, and so it makes sense to send sales and marketing people to the conventions.
So Blank Stare asks, can you get a sense of how long a piece of art takes just by looking at it, or is speed not a consideration at this stage? I think you unpack this a lot in your comics coach video, but Blank Stare asked that question, Mike.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I can't tell just by looking at how long it takes. And it may not be important to me at the portfolio stage, but what's really important is that when you do start working for me, you have to be able to deliver a page or an issue within a realistic period of time. Ideally, an issue a month or a page a day. And the quality that's in your sample portfolio pages better match what I get on my desk when I hire you for the job. Because one of the things I'll ask you is, if I'm hiring you, is like, how long does it take you to do an issue? And some people might say 4 weeks, some people may say 5 weeks, some people might 6 weeks. Whatever your answer is, as long as it's somewhat realistic, I can work with that as long as I know. And as long as what's in your portfolio pages, the quality matches what's in the end result after I hire you. That's super important.
So somebody says,
because if it took
I did this in one day, you're going to go, oh, okay.
I would say that's great. I would say that's great. But if I look at a page and I say, how long did it take you? And you tell me, it took me a week to draw this page. Maybe you got a really pretty looking page, but that doesn't really work well for me, because the comics creation, it's an assembly line. It's a creative assembly line, but it's still an assembly line. And taking a week to draw one page, that means it's going to take, close to half a year to draw an entire issue. That doesn't work for me when I have to get an issue out every month.
So what are you going to tell somebody that admits that this takes me a week? What's your advice going to be?
If they say what?
If they say it takes me a week to draw a page, what's the advice going to be?
Oh, you have to keep practicing and to get quicker. Probably what's happening there is there's too many decisions being made in the creative process. Second guessing, maybe striving for perfection, but get a faster pencil. But there's too many decisions taking place. So one of the tricks of a great artist is knowing when to say, I've worked enough on this page or this panel, I have to move on to the next one in order to meet my deadline, in order to keep going. And you know what? Not every panel you draw is going to be your best one ever. And that's all part of it. That's fine. But being self-aware enough and knowing when to say, I'm done with this page and moving on to the next one, that's super important.
Yeah. Knowing where to focus your drawing time. Now, if people will talk about how legendarily fast Jack Kirby was, and yet, today's artist tends to put more backgrounds in, tends to put more detail into certain aspects of individual panels or pages. Not every panel in early comics had a background. Sometimes they were just flat colors, or they suggested a background. I would imagine that you're probably going to coach that artist, make some decisions that will allow you to streamline your process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, a lot of artists coming into the industry these days feel the pressure that every single panel has to have everything, soup to nuts. Like, from top to bottom, detailed, intricate backgrounds and everything. That's not the case. Part of a good storyteller is knowing, what panels should have great backgrounds and a lot of detail, and then knowing what panels might require just a simple, negative space around the character. You bring up Jack Kirby, and Jack Kirby was a master at that, and that's one of the reasons why, he could draw several issues per month. He knew which pages, which panels needed all of the detail and everything, and then when to focus more on the interaction of the characters. It's tougher for artists these days because the artwork has become more advanced, and a lot of times people assume that because it's more advanced, there's pressure on them to make sure that every single panel of the page is a masterpiece, but that doesn't have to be the case.
Well, and Mike, back in the days in early comics publishing, you were not capable as much detail being reproduced. So the artist had to work with simpler lines, whereas today's process for printing allows for incredibly granular, detailed line work. So you can, as an artist, go crazy with your hatch work and your shading, whereas years ago in the earliest days, if you did that, it wouldn't reproduce anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I mean that's something that happened in the early 90s, like when you and I were both coming into the business and Image Comics was starting, so many people flocked to the image artists because of the detail that was there and the intricate line work and everything. But at the same time, not all, but some of the artists, because of all that extra line work, they ran into deadline problems.
Mm-hmm.
And it's finding that balance in between that is important.
No, I never heard this quote, but Dom Gomez says, "Throw away the friggin' eraser," as John Buscema said. Is that what would that mean, Mike? Throw away the eraser.
Well, all right. So I've never heard that quote, but I could picture like John Buscema saying this. Don't second guess yourself. Don't go in, draw something, and then change your mind and be like, I got to erase this and draw something else. Just be confident in your work, draw it on the page, and move on to the next one.
That's a good point. Especially with a Buscema who was doing such consistent work for so many years. He'll get to another page. He'll have another opportunity. He explains. John Romita Jr. said it was told to him so he could be faster with deadlines. There you go.
That makes sense. And John Romita Jr. is known, certainly in kind of like post 90s, for being like Jack Kirby, being able to produce several issues per month at high levels of quality because he knew when to say it's time to go to the next panel, it's time to go to the next page.
Yeah, and he's had so much experience, he knows what panels work. Balfagor says, now my pages are going to take a week each. No eraser. By the way, that's Alan Evans. That's our mutual friend, Alan. All right, Mike. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to show another one of your videos from your lesson series. I'm going to roll the clip and then we'll talk about it.
Next commandment is putting your best foot forward. And with this, many people ask me, where do I put my best work? Do I put it in the beginning of the portfolio or do I save it till the end? Definitely put it up front. It's the obvious thing. Again, talking about first impressions, talking about that in this industry, a book will be judged by its cover. You want your best work up front. If you don't, an editor may look through it, they don't see what they like, and they put it down, and then you're out of a job. So make sure the best work is up front.
Ooh, that's good advice, Mike. That's deep. All right. So talk to me, how are art portfolios getting to you today? They email, they're coming in the mail. How many page turns are you going to give it before you decide you're done?
Okay, that's a good question. Everything gets sent to me digitally these days. I don't have hard copies of anything. I don't even know how people would get it to me.
That's right. You guys don't even you're not even in that main office, right?
No, I'm sure that maybe physical copies of samples go to the office, but anything I get is sent to me digitally.
Mhm.
I can usually look at 3 or 4 pages and know a few things. I know, are they ready for prime time? Do they have a style that fits for my company and what we publish? Is a style that I enjoy? So I can tell that from a few pages, 3, 4, 5 pages, something like that. But what that wise man Mike said 10 years ago or whatever is still true today. Um, definitely have your best stuff in the front of your portfolio. If there's old stuff that's several years old, take it out. If you feel work isn't good or your peers are telling you it's not good, take it out. Um, have your best stuff in the portfolio and front load it, because a lot of times, just like I was just saying, like I may be going through a portfolio and maybe I have 100 portfolios to go through. So I'm going to go through yours and I got to be able to tell really quickly if you have what it takes. This actually happens because, all right, I'm going to talk about the Mad Cave talent search. Okay. So every year we conduct a talent search where we look at multiple portfolios for artists, colorists, writers, letterers. And no surprise, the artist section, we have several hundred
Wow.
applicants.
Wow.
And so several hundred applicants, and me, the publisher, and all of my editors, we all go through every single one. And, that's in addition to all of our regular work. So if your best stuff is not in the first few pages of that portfolio, we will most likely pass on
Yeah, because you're moving
to
fast.
the next person. We're moving fast. So wow us in the beginning. Same thing if it was like a in-person thing at a convention. Sometimes like this has happened a lot where I'm just moving from the company booth to a panel room, or I'm moving from my hotel to a restaurant, and someone grabs me along the way and they're like, "Hey, do you mind looking at my portfolio?" So if I have those few seconds to give to you, make sure your best stuff is up front.
Yeah, I would imagine that if you're walking and you're like, this better be good.
Well, yeah, that's why another commandment, which I'll bring up now, it's relevant here. I may not always have that time or the attention to look at your portfolio when I'm walking from my booth to the panel. So my next thing I'll say to you is, can you send it to me digitally? And I always have my card with me. And I'm like, here you go. And so that's another commandment. Have your portfolio ready digitally so that you can send it somewhere in a moment. Most people these days, they have that ready, but going some years back, not everyone did.
Not everybody did. And I've while I don't get as many as you, I've received like giant PDFs as an email attachment. There's just times where I'm like, that was a little too big to send as an email attachment. How do you feel about email attachments versus, say, links to a portfolio site?
So I'm not sure I
Do
understand.
you mind if somebody makes a large PDF attachment, or do you prefer if it goes and links to their DeviantArt portfolio or something else?
Yeah, I don't mind either way. I get both. Sometimes I get a link to, to a website where it's your whole portfolio. Other times it's a PDF that's sent to me. It doesn't matter. As long as I can navigate it easily and quickly. That's what, a PDF is always like, you can just quickly scroll through it. Not to knock some of the websites out there, DeviantArt is not one of them, but some sites like DeviantArt, they're not that easy to navigate through to go from page to page. So
No, not always.
if you're going to use one of those sites, make sure you use it. The other thing I'll advise too is that I think Twitter or Blue Sky, effective social media tools are not the best way to showcase your artwork if you're trying to show it to an editor. It just, having to scroll and to find the images and everything, and it just, you're blowing up things to a bigger size. It's very cumbersome. So I wouldn't use that as your primary digital source. And Instagram too, Instagram can be effective, and I have hired people just by looking at their Instagram page, but there's always an urge on Instagram to do flashy pieces of artwork, covers, pinups, that type of thing, or to kind of zero in on a certain part. And for me, I like to look at whole pages, sequential pages, and that's not always going to be the best. Instagram's not going to be the best way to showcase pages like that. So I'm not saying don't use Instagram, but certainly don't have it as your only source to show people.
No, that makes sense. All right, the questions are getting backed up, Mike. So we're gonna hit you through. So Jared asks, how do you feel about what some might see as "quote unquote" cheating with digital art, meaning like you duplicate a background for multiple panels, for example, or doing things digitally that you cannot do traditionally? And I'll note that Jared is a digital artist primarily.
Okay. I mean, I would say that if it gets in the way of the storytelling, if it's something that the reader, the human eye, notices right away, then it may be working against you. If you do it effectively and organically, it can be great. Like a perfect example is a different Buscema, Sal, John's brother. Sal Buscema, many times in his artwork, especially when he was doing Spider-Man with Mark DeMatteis, he would what we call stat a panel, photostat it, duplicate it, and maybe just change, a little bit of the expression on the Green Goblin or something like that. But that was done for dramatic storytelling. There was a reason why he did it, and he did it organically, and it was effective. If we're just seeing the same exact thing copied over in the same way from panel to panel, that's...
Well, if it's a cheat, it's a cheat versus if it's done, the stat is a beat, right? Like a beat reaction might work, right? But just stealing your own stuff so you don't have to draw it twice, that might be the cheat.
Right. Just make sure it's done organically and flows with the story. Like, there are also multiple applications that help artists create an environment, and then you can rotate the environment and shift it and zoom in and out. I mean, that's all great because you're keeping it moving, you're keeping it flowing. You just want to avoid it looking like cardboard cutouts, or looking like it's just, because the readers are smart. They're gonna notice it. They're gonna call it for a cheat.
All right. So someone asked, Blank Stare asked, is there a vetting process before a portfolio gets to your inbox, Mike?
No. Officially, probably. There's each company probably has a different submissions email or submissions portal on their websites. So, those are certainly, official means for someone to get their portfolio.
Blank Stare wanted to sweeten the
company
process for you, Mike. What if his portfolio with coffee?
Sure. Yeah. It's only decaf these days, though. But
all right, Jared, do things like the number of followers on social media that the artists have make a difference in your choice to hire them, or is it more based on artistic merit?
Artistic merit will always come first. That being said, I mean, obviously, if someone has a huge social media following, 50,000, something like that, I am going to take a look at that. To me, that says that many, many, many other people are interested in this person's artwork. Maybe I should be too. So I will take an extra look. It's definitely not going to be the only factor.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't hurt.
Do you take cards in return, Mike? Like
from
somebody's
artists?
like, I'm a colorist. Here's my card.
Yeah, I can. I think, and this is just me. Every editor might be different, but for me, I find when I'm at a convention, if people give me cards and portfolios and everything, it all kind of goes into a pile in my hotel room, and that's when I'm frantically trying to pack and get to the airport and everything. And my preferred way of receiving things is if I give you my card and then I say, send it to me next week sometime when I'm back in the office.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
agree.
and then I'm sitting at my desk, I'm work focused, and something pops up in my email, and I'll be able to look at it, concentrate on it. So.
And everybody's a jokester tonight. Alan Evans noted gift cards. Yeah, those work. Those work. One of the questions that also came up was what kind of file? PDF. I think you did say PDF is probably the go-to.
PDFs are the easiest. I mean, you could just open it and just scroll through the entire thing. Some people send, a bunch of JPEGs in one email. That's fine too. Just don't send me something where I have to go to a link and then download something to then open it to look at it. If there's multiple steps involved, you might not lose me, but you will lose a bunch of editors.
Right. Well, and look, at the end of the day, you know that you're probably not going to get a virus from a PDF. That's probably the easiest thing. I wouldn't want to download a PowerPoint because you can pass a virus. There's just different considerations that you have to, you do have to consider if you're sending somebody an attachment.
Right.
So, Mike, this is really great. Any final thoughts, because we are almost out of time, about what you are actively looking for from artists for future of Mad Cave?
The nice thing about Mad Cave is that we are diverse in our offerings. We have several different imprints, and each one calls for different styles. We have a dedicated manga imprint, which launches this summer, called Nakama.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we're obviously looking for artwork that is manga inspired or traditional manga. We have a middle grade division called Paper Cuts. So with that, we're looking for, I don't want to say simpler artwork, but artwork that is definitely geared more towards a younger demographic. We have a YA imprint, young adult imprint called Maverick. And, with that, I think, we can be a little more flexible in the type of styles we bring in. It could be a little bit on the quirky side, something that appeals to that demographic. And then, we do regular traditional comic books for teen audiences and above, action stuff, licensed properties. And, with that, it's kind of more the traditional superhero style of artwork and storytelling. So, we're in a good spot. We can take artists from all walks of life into our company.
And is there a link on the Mad Cave Studios website where people can find the submissions?
Yes, I'm almost positive there is.
If not, there will be by tomorrow. No, I think
there
well.
is. We do have a regular submissions link on the website.
That's great. And Mike, hold on real quick. Two quick questions. Middle school sounds like a hard demo, or is it easier than YA?
I would say actually it's a little bit easier to find artists that fit into the middle grade space than it is the YA space.
All right, Mike. Well, thank you so much. Now, I think Mike Fasolo might have left you some snacks, even though he wasn't able to stick around. What snacks? That's our 70s outro music.
Yeah, I like it.
What food was left in the green room for you, Mike?
In the green room today, I found like a bunch of bananas, and like some salt in the form of a rock.
Wow, that's
I know. Really
you know,
strange.
it was weird. He was having internet problems, and so I'm a little not surprised at all. Guys, thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you, Mike Marts, for joining us for the follow-up. We'll have you up again. You're a wonderful guest and a great friend.
Thanks, buddy.
As always, we will see you every Tuesday at 8 p.m. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks again for joining us for Comic Book School Live.